National Cracker. This is my favorite time of day. You put a smile on my face. You're Jamaican. You're number one. Come on, enjoy it every day. You can have it in so many ways. You make it a perfect Jamaican moment when you make it national.
Talk Up Youth, brought to you by National Baking Company, a Stanley and Empress production.
Can you imagine, from all the abuses and injustice faced by our youths today, sexual abuse, drugs, crime, depression, I am still alone. Healing, can I rise again? Talk up youth, 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 talk up youth.
Hello my youth, it's not time to talk up, it's time to listen up. Youth, know that education is the key and knowledge is power.
Talk Up Youth, myself Talk Up Youth. This is the platform where we transform people's lives by giving them a space to talk up as they share their stories, ideas, and survival mechanisms in which others can relate. But what is most liberating is that we become inspired by the strength, courage, and will of our young people who have overcome many obstacles. Our next guest is such. He could have given up on life, lost the motivation to move forward, but didn't. Let's hear his experience as a victim of gang violence. Hi Garfield, welcome to Talk Up Youth.
Hi Empress, how are you doing?
I'm glad you're alive for Talk Up.
Well, I'm happy as well.
We're not going to tell the people about that part yet, but tell us a little bit about your childhood. Where did you grow up?
Well, I grew up in Tredegar Park in Spanish Town. It's on the outskirts of Spanish Town. Nice little community. Lived with my mother, grandmother, grandfather, and my bigger brother.
All of you live together?
Yes, we live together.
And we know that you lost your mom as well at an early age. Tell us about that.
I lost my mother when I was 9 years old. It was very sad. It was terrible. It was terrible. It was terrible. It was terrible. But you know, my grandmother basically stepped in place and she filled that gap. So, I mean, after a while, it was like nothing.
Like nothing. Where was your father in all of this?
My father lived in the States. Never saw him from the day I was born at the time. So, yeah, he was basically not present in my life at all.
Is that common in Spanish Town, lack of fathers?
Well, yes. In Spanish Town, I think in Jamaica, a lot of the time, these fathers, they think that, you know, we leave, go to the States and it's a better life, but it's not. And after a while, there was no contact. So it was us and some of his relatives who chose to continue keeping contact with us and helping us out.
I'll ask you later, because this is a common thread with most of our young people on Talk Up Youth, lack of fathers. But we're focusing on gang violence, and I want to get to the root of it. Tell us about Spain at the time. I'm going to say Spain, not Spain in the country, Spain, but Spanish Town, Jamaica. What was gang violence like growing up?
Okay.
What did you experience? What did you see?
Spanish Town, at the time, we know things was happening, but it did not affect us so much. We were children. You could go certain places, certain hours. I used to walk home from school a lot from Spanish Town. I mean, spend off taxi fare and just walk. And it was fine at the time. But every now and then, you know, you had a flare up and gunshots firing and you had to stay in, or one morning you get up, you go out and there's a crowd of people, somebody just died. And so it was typically like that, but it didn't affect us so much at the time.
Did you ever get involved with violence? Were you ever the perpetrator?
No. I was a houseboy. My grandmother always have us stay in because she knew what was happening out there.
Okay.
So me and my brother, we had to stay in most of the time, other than, you know, sneaking out to go to the river and then when we come back, you know, beaten. But, you know, that was just a part of it.
Okay. All right. So your whole life growing up, you would see moments of violence in your community. How do we know it's gang violence? Do we know what kinds of gangs, what age group? I mean, tell us about the atmosphere. What is the word on the street after a man is found dead or a woman? Or what kind of people are dying?
Well, usually it's young men, and they were usually the perpetrators as well. You usually hear that, you know, it starts off with something small, some dispute over something, somebody want to control a particular section of the community or work that is going on and so on and so forth. And that's usually where it stems from. That's what you normally hear.
Share
Yes.
with us some of those terrible moments in Spanish Town.
Okay, well, it started when this whole thing kicked off in terms of there was one particular set that wanted to convert the community because...
When you say set of dogs, set of animals, set of pigs, set of goats, set of what?
Men.
Okay,
Or
sorry.
a
You just
particular
said
gang.
this set, so I just wanted to know, yeah.
A particular
Okay.
gang. Because we know most of the communities, inner city communities, they are aligned to a particular political party.
Oh, they are?
Yes, they
Okay.
So ours was aligned to one particular party, and there was this gang who wanted to change that.
Okay.
So that caused a whole heap of feud.
What does a gang, when you say a gang wants to change that, they want to change somebody from what? From believing in a political group, or they want you to join them on the road to take out certain activities or be involved? I mean, what do they want
well,
from
it's
you?
both. They want to change you to a particular political group, and they also want some of us to join their gang because what I saw is at times if you're not with them, you're against them. So even if you're thinking that you're neutral, if you're not with them, you're considered the enemy. The enemy. The enemy. The enemy.
And are you at risk because you're not with them?
Yes.
What kind of risk are you exposed to because of that?
Well, one particular incident that happened was, of course, my brother wasn't there. I decided that I'm just going to do my thing. I'm going to school. I had support from a friend because that's how I went to school. Okay. There was this particular friend who gave me lunch money and so on.
That's nice.
So I was going to school, and I mean, I've been approached before by gang leader to give information, to participate. I mean, at one point I was practically being handed a walkie-talkie.
What information they want? The GSAT examination results? What information do they want?
Oh, well,
like who is where or what is...
Yes, they want you to tell them if you know anything about this person, what this person doing, like how you talk to this person, things like those. And at one point, as I said, they gave me a walkie-talkie. Whenever I see police, I would use that.
Oh, okay.
I refused all of that.
Okay.
And I remember even one particular day coming from school, there was a group of them in my yard. And this is something that they were doing for a while. And I asked them not to stay in my yard anymore because them a beat up my yard.
Oh, you're bold.
Them a beat up my yard and police are going to come and meet them are going to come do something.
Okay.
So, I mean, I became an enemy right there and then.
Oh, because you didn't want to be a part of the gang life. All right. Tell us about the moment, though. The moment something happened to you.
Well, the first thing that happened was I remember one day I left my house. I had a daughter at that point. I left my house just to go stay with her for a while, to go back to my house. And then all of a sudden, gunshots started to ring out.
Hold it there. Brap, brap. We're going to take a break. That was the sound of the gunshot. He survived all of that, or he survived something. We don't know. When we come back, we'll talk up more with Garfield and hear more about the gunshot after staying at his girlfriend. All right, so we're just talking there during the break. We've heard some of Garfield's story in Spanish tone. So let's pick up and get straight to it. So you went to your girlfriend's, the shots were ringing off. Where was she? What area?
She had,
Which area?
she lived in the community. It wasn't far from my house. So shots started to ring out. She left to school, to go to evening school. Sometime in the night, we were seeing men walking through the community back and forth. And sometime
Does that frighten you when you see men walking back and forth in the community?
It was scary.
Okay.
It was
Why is it
terrifying.
scary? Is it that you just don't know them, or how are they walking? Is it a certain swagger?
They had guns in their hand, and at one point you could see them with spray paint, spraying things all over the place.
What, they're tagging, they're writing
Yes.
the name of their gang?
So,
Okay.
at one point there was smoke and there was flame. I could see my house from where I was. And that's when I knew that my house was gone. So
Your house was gone. What did you see? What happened?
there was flames in the morning, because we couldn't come out until in the morning. When we went out, everything was gone, every single thing.
Why did they burn down your house? Flames? Who burnt down your house? Why was your house burned down? Did you leave the toaster on? What happened? And how do you know?
Okay, it was basically, it wasn't my house alone that was burnt down on that particular night. So it was about 3 houses that were burnt down, and other houses were shut up. So basically, as I said, because I wasn't with them, I was against them. So I was an enemy. So that's why I was targeted.
Oh, that's why they burnt down your house.
Yes.
And what did you lose, and how did that affect
lost
you?
everything, because at the time I was working, I was getting my stuff. I was becoming, you know, my own
An
person.
independent young man.
Exactly, and everything was gone. Everything that I had for my daughter, photos of my mother, photos of my grandmother, everything was destroyed.
Did that make you
Memories.
angry?
I was very angry. I was extremely angry.
Were the perpetrators caught?
Not at the time, but what I decided at the time, a lot of persons were moving out because of the violence that was taking place. I decided I wasn't going to move because that's exactly what they wanted, and I was not prepared to give them what they wanted.
Wow. Another moment happened for you, a significant moment which changed your life, and it has to do with gunshots again. Another victim, Garfield, of gang violence.
Yes.
Tell us that story.
Okay, so one day I was coming from work. I left work, I was really tired, really tired. And when I went straight to bed. Usually I would just drop on the couch and the TV would put me to bed, but I went straight to bed that night. And a few hours after, there was this banging. And by the time I woke up, what I could see was men entering my room. I made a shout. I did not know what it was. I think I said stop. I'm not sure. But immediately they started to fire in my direction. So I felt getting shot. My ears was ringing. I couldn't hear anything for a while, just this constant ring, and feeling the shots piercing my body, piercing my body, piercing my body, piercing my body.
What does a shot piercing your body feel like?
It's this intense burning pain, searing pain. And it was happening there.
Did you think you were going to die right there and then?
I think I was going to die at one point, laying there, because at one point I thought to myself, well, lay dead. And I was laying there and I was waiting on the final fatal shot. I was really waiting for somebody to just walk over me and put that final bullet in my head or something.
How many times were you shot, Garfield?
I was shot 7 times.
Where?
I was shot 4 times in my leg, 2 times in my right arm, and I was shot in the chest. And several other superficial wounds or grazes. So that was what happened.
Did you see how many men? Or were there men? What did you see? Do you know how many people?
It was, well, one of the saving grace for me was that it was extremely dark.
Okay.
Because I love the dark. I love to sleep in the dark. So it was extremely dark, but I could see 2 figures. And I could make out the weapons that they were actually using as well. So, and I could hear voices on the outside. So I know it wasn't just those two, but there were others.
And were they saying anything at all?
The only thing I could hear was when the shots subsided was when the ones on the outside calling the ones inside to come.
Yeah.
And I heard shots on the outside when they left the house, and that was it. They
How did
went
you
away.
survive that?
Oh, I was there for 1 hour and 5 minutes because immediately after it happened, I got up and I checking myself.
Hang on, you got up after how many gunshot wounds?
Well, not get up, but I was laying down, so I got up, I sat up in the bed.
Okay.
And I realized that my right arm, I could not move it any at all. I could not move my right leg, which was crossed over my left leg. And the pain was so severe, I couldn't even move the left leg. So it was, and I could feel the blood flowing from my arm and my leg.
You were scared?
I was at one point, but I realized after a few minutes that, hey, I'm alive and I need to do something to preserve my life. I looked around, found my cell phone, barely had any credit on it.
So they didn't take your phone, they didn't take anything?
They didn't take anything.
Okay.
I got my phone, I made a call, I called a friend, and just to let them know what was happening. That's the only thing I could do. And then I called the police. I was there on the phone with this female for the full...
A female police, an officer, the operator? Okay.
For an hour, I was on the phone with her.
1 hour?
1 hour,
Well,
that's how long I had to wait.
On hold why were you waiting so long?
Well, there was nobody there to, well, she's calling, there's nobody there to come and assist me at the time.
You're lucky you had credit for stay on the phone for 1 hour.
Well, it was 119, so...
Oh, it's free?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Yes.
So-
You didn't call the local station number. Okay, cool.
Well, maybe they would have directed me to call somebody else.
Right.
So I was there on the phone. At one point, I was getting scared because I started to feel weak. I was so tired. And at one point, I was feeling real cold. But then I realized that the fan was on, so I turned it off.
Sorry, I'm not laughing. So you weren't dying, it was a fan.
It was a fan.
Hallelujah.
But I knew time was running out on me because, as I said, I could feel the blood flowing.
Yes.
I couldn't, at one point, I tried to get the sheet to tie around my arm, but I only have one hand available. So I was just there and...
And nobody came in the house to check on you in the community?
Nobody
Your
from the
neighbors, because I'm sure you live in a close...
I had neighbors, but nobody. I was just there by myself.
All right. So tell me I want to get to the moment. The police came after what, an hour, 2 hours? When did they reach? Did an ambulance come?
The police arrived an hour and 5 minutes after it happened. They came in, they were just looking around. They were looking all over the place. And at one point I had to say, help me now, help me. And I said to one of the officers, I'm not a criminal, can you help? And she was like, I'm no business whether or not you're a criminal. That was her reply. And they were there looking about, then they tried to, nobody wanted to touch me because I was bleeding. I guess nobody wanted to get their uniforms messy. They tried to kick the door off completely so that they could put me on it like a stretcher. And that wasn't working out.
Okay, keep going.
I'm thinking on my feet. There was a blanket on the bed, so I told them, I'm on a blanket, so just lift the blanket, please. So they did that. They brought me out and put me in the back of a police van. Nobody there.
Pick up like an open thing
the
van.
open back. Nobody inside there with me. And that space is not a large space. So I was somewhat curled up inside there. And on the journey, going to the hospital, going turns, I was basically
bounced all over the place,
side to side in the back of the van. At that point, I had come off the phone with the operator. So I was, and then all of a sudden this flood of calls, and I'm answering my phone on the way, telling people I'm going to the hospital.
So your friend, your called everybody, told them, but you got to the hospital.
Got to the hospital. Everybody froze. Everybody froze. Because there was where I worked. Everybody froze.
Oh, you worked at the hospital.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So everybody froze, and it took a while for everybody to get into action, but everybody did. And I was there for about an hour. Had to go to X-ray and put in a chest tube because my lung was punctured and it was losing air. So, and about 2 hours after, I had to go to the operating theater because my leg was seriously damaged, and so was my arm. So I had to go to the operating theater a few hours after.
After all this, did you regret not leaving Spanish Town?
No, I did not regret not leaving there because I was doing, I think I was doing my part in terms of trying to help, because I was the president of the youth club in the community.
When this all happened?
Yes, I
No,
was.
sir.
And I was also an executive on their Citizens Association. So I was active in the community, so I didn't regret not leaving.
So after all of this that's happened to you, grandmother gone, mother gone, father gone, everything, house burnt down, gunshots, 7-something shots, to the hospital in the back of a police truck. Are you still positive and in a positive space?
Yes, actually I am, because what I did was, after a while I went back.
You went back again to Spanish Town?
I went back to Spanish
To
Town
do more good?
to start my youth club, get it running again.
All right, hold on. Garfield should be a lesson to all that no matter what you experience, there can always be a brighter future. After this break on this show, it's Talk Up Youth.
National cracker. This is my favorite time of day. You put a smile on my face. You're Jamaican. You're number one. Come on, enjoy it every day. You can have it in so many ways. Oh, you make it a perfect Jamaican moment when you make it national.
Wow, I can't imagine ever being in Garfield's shoes. My youths, we now thank our Talk Up Youth counselor, Dr. Ruth White, who is an associate professor of social work in the United States, and she's also Jamaican who works locally and abroad, and she's joining us as one of our counselors here in Jamaica for our Talk Up Youth. Please comment on what you've been hearing.
Well, thank you for having me, Empress. The first thing I can think about is resilience. And in terms of somebody who's able to survive, keep going forward, and not having what a lot of people would have reacted with depression, would not have been able to continue going to school, and all these different losses. These are all significant losses in somebody's life. So the first thing I want to know is about your own attitude towards life, because a lot of people would not have made it as far.
My attitude towards life, I mean, life must go on. As long as you have it, it must go on. And you live life according to how you want to live it. So I want something, I'm going to go for it. No matter how many obstacles in my way, I just move them forward.
Yes, and in social work, that is what we call resilience. And part of it is the human spirit that is willing to go on. But I am amazed that, I always think there has to be, what do you think has been some of the negative? Because, the story is very, very inspiring. But you must have had some fallout somewhere. The emotional part of all of these losses, like what pulled you through emotionally?
Okay, at a lot of the times I was depressed. I was seriously depressed. I did not want to continue. I did not want to go on. Sometimes it came into my mind contemplating suicide, because at times I felt like this was too much. After going through one thing, having to go through something else, as soon as you think that, this is over, something else. So I was really depressed at one point, but something in me just, decided to continue.
And I have to ask you, Dr. White, what do you say to another young man? Because, we hear about this gang violence in many of our communities in Jamaica. What about those who don't have that resilience that Garfield has? How do they get through?
Well, I think one of the things he talked about was having this youth club. And gangs are there because gangs serve as an alternative family. And we know that when kids are feeling lost, disconnected in some way, they join a gang because a gang provides the protection, the love, the loyalty, all of the things that you would normally have from a family. You talked about loss of fathers. If there are no other male role models, a lot of times people find somebody who looks respectable because they have the resources that you want, car, money, you can buy things, you can have girlfriend, treat them. And nobody's thinking, when you're young, you're not thinking, well, how did they get this? They're just become the role model because the gang fills in for something else. So one of the things to do is to find an alternative gang, you know, and for a lot of kids, it's sports. I mean, sports keep a lot of boys out of trouble. Youth clubs.
But that leads me to what Garfield spoke about, and that's your youth club. After all of this, you've gone back to start or regroup for your youth club. Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, our youth club is the Tridica Park Youth and Sports Club. So what it's geared towards is socialization and re-socialization. So you have young men in the community that probably had joined a gang, and sometimes because of police activities, these gangs break up for a while. So instead of having them come back in and draw them in, you know, there's the alternative, and you get as much as them as possible. You're not going to get everybody, but I mean, if anybody counts.
Love that. All right, before we end the show, I have to ask you, Garfield, what is your one statement to the perpetrators of gang violence? What would you say to them right now?
It's not worth it. It's not worth it any at all. Taking a life is not going to make your life any better. As a matter of fact, it's going to make your life worse because you're going to be hunted by the police. You're going to be hunted by other gangs. So it doesn't make any sense.
All right, last word from you, Dr. Ruth, as it relates to gang violence, the victims and the perpetrators.
I said one thing about the perpetrators is that they also have to live with the fact that they murdered somebody. And I worked in jail, and I will tell you, they're bad on the street, but when they're locked up and it's time to go to bed, these are men that cry in their sleep at night. And so it's not just, they look tough, but they're still young men. And I think one of the things that he talked about that I would emphasize for communities is that all of the different sectors of the community have to work together to put down gang violence. So that you're talking about a teacher, sports, business, everybody has to get involved in order to provide a community support for youth so that they don't take the alternative route and go to gangs.
And we can't turn a blind eye.
No.
And somebody that's been the victim, they're supposed to, as you said earlier, find groups and people like you that can support you through your journey. Thank you so much,
Thank
Dr.
you for
White.
having me.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Garfield. Yeah, sweat though. I'm white down. You sweat. Come, baby.
This is a hero over
It's
here.
a hero.
It's a hero over
Sweat.
there.
Every hero must sweat.
Thank you.
All right. Violence isn't only about the tragedies that you see on the TV or on the internet. It is real. It has affected our past, and it is a part of our present day lives. Youth, we need to create a new future, one of peace. We need to break the cycle of violent crimes and the vicious atrocities from our colonial masters and our political history, because we cannot grow if we continue to cripple and harm our communities. Gang violence is a serious matter, and a lot of times the bad things can be prevented if someone would just take the time to report what they've seen or heard beforehand. Talk up, youth, Mr. Talk up, youth. And save our youth. Save our nation, because this affects all of us. Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. So now let's ask Step Up for Talk Up. Step up. What you say?
Boy, my mind just gang up on me. Tell me if you got join and mix with bad company. Walk in a gang that wrong for me. Gonna me think pastor boy can't pray for me. Boy, my mind just gang up on me. Boy, my mind just done up on me. Them burn down me house and kill me family. Dog, puss and bird pichery. No help at all. The community a jeer me. A jeer me. Young at skull a run me down for spear me. 7 shot to Almighty Father. Thanks for save me. Boy, me mind just a gang up on me. Boy, me mind just a done up on me. 119, 1 hour upon the line. Police are treat I like I a criminal and not a victim. Not a victim. Them sick eye stomach system. I no give up still with the positive thinking. Boy, my mind just gang up on me. Me no want join them gang to them that's wrong. But my choice that as summitan. Gang violence makes no sense. Boy, my mind just gang up on me. My mind just done up on me.
Talk Up Youth, brought to you by National Baking Company, a Stanley and Empress production.